As I've been closing out the podcast lately, I've been enjoying asking my guests this question at the end, something to the effect of, if you could speak to that younger self, what would you say to them? And it has brought up some great responses. It has also brought up a lot of philosophical discussion. And just yesterday, my wife asked me, how would I respond to that question? And again, it wasn't just the response to the question, but it was the depth of where we went to afterwards that really got me thinking so much. And it actually goes into a whole sci-fi framework. Think Matrix, Total Recall, and the question of if we could go back and quite literally either extract something from the mind or implant something in a moment, would we? And if we could, what might it be? Thanks for tuning in to episode 11 of the Out of Step podcast. This is for those of you who are in the world of supporting other humans, whatever you might call yourself, whether it's a coach, a facilitator, a therapist, a healer, and more specifically, those of us who feel like we live more on the edges of that world. If you are someone who's looking to step into the realm of supporting other humans, I've got 3 seats left in my Wayfaring Method coaching certification. It's an 8-month certification. And at the time that I'm going to release this podcast, we only have 6 days left until we launch. So very last minute here, if you're listening and you're curious, head to outofstep.life/Wayfaring Method for more information. So I want to start this discussion with sort of the philosophical speed bump here, which is my personal belief that our path is what it's meant to be, meaning all of my experiences that I've had through life were really meant to be there in that moment to support me towards what we might think of as the highest and greatest good. Now, I have to admit, there's also a part of me that doesn't know if that's 100% true, because there is the deeper question of, well, was I meant to go through that really traumatic experience? Did I have to go through that just to learn the lessons that I have learned? And when I asked this question to some of my guests of, well, what would you say to that younger self? There's a tricky little piece here. Like, should we say anything to the younger self? Because that would change how we moved through life. It would change the lessons that we learned, the experiences that we have had. Or would it? But if we take the philosophical piece away for a moment and just purely hypothetical, let's say there's no such thing as butterfly effect. We could literally fly back, transport back to our youngest version of ourselves at whatever point we want to. And just like in the Matrix, we could upload a lifetime of learning and wisdom in a moment. And that would include everything that has come from our experiences. So the appreciation of the experiences, the depth of the experiences, it would quite literally give us the full spectrum of wisdom from a lifetime of experience. Let's say we could do that, or even go kind of total recall with it, where we could go in with this machine and modify the mind and really reach in and potentially extract something from the mind, remove some type of belief system or thought. What if we could? What if we could do that with no ill effects? And all of a sudden, something that really shaped our life, we could change potentially to have a very, very different experience of life. So let's just entertain this for a second. What if you could do this? If you could go back to any time in your life, where would you go? Would you be a little kid? Would you be a teenager? Would it be the very beginning of your career path? And if you could go there, would you want to maybe implant some type of wisdom? Or if you could go in with that creepy little microscopic arm and carve out some chunk of your brain that contained a belief system or a story that you held at that time, what would that be? And once you can consider this, how would that affect life? Like, what would that have done if you could have changed that belief system, or if you could have implanted that wisdom at that point? What do you think would have happened? What would have happened differently? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be good, bad, right, or wrong, but what could you picture in how that would shape life? So when Michelle asked me this question, my first thought went to the time in my life when I was most insecure, which was really my early 20s. I was getting into the hair industry. I was getting a little bit of reputation. I was kind of becoming the cool kid. And I really fed off of that, if I'm being honest. The reason I fed off of that was because there was a lot of insecurity at that point in my life. I didn't feel like I had value without the approval of the outside world. And so as I looked back and Michelle asked me this question, I immediately thought if I could go back to that time and either carve out that little part of my brain that says, I need some type of external approval to be valuable, or potentially implant the wisdom that it has really come from the last 20 some odd years of my life, that the external validation is not what makes me valuable. I really can look back and see how many things that would have dramatically shaped in my life. I think I could have helped even more people. And the beautiful thing is I do know that I did help a lot of people along the way, but I know that I could have helped even more if my need for external approval wouldn't have been in the way. I also think about the amount of suffering I put myself through during that time of my life, just wanting everyone else's acceptance, wanting their validation. And that caused a lot of heartache. That caused a lot of suffering. It caused a lot of moments of trying to shape myself or dress myself or speak in a way that would create that sense of acceptance. And that departure, at least in my experience, that departure from ourselves causes a lot of pain because we're moving further and further from authenticity. So I look back, and again, from this very sci-fi what-if standpoint, if I could go back to that time of my life and carve out that little chunk of my brain that said, you need everyone else's approval so that you are valuable, or potentially, tap into the matrix and have that just flash of, hard drive information that I've accumulated over the past 25 plus years, that I am valuable without that external validation. I do see how it would have changed a lot of my life. Now, even if I could, would I? That's the big, beautiful question here. And perhaps it's actually not the question, because we can't do it. So why even ask this question if it's not possible? And to me, these are the types of things when I get a chance to sit and dig into these things and consider it from this sci-fi sort of lens. It gives me a fresh perspective. It gives me more appreciation of the experiences I do have. It gives me more appreciation of the wisdom that I have cultivated over these years. And it gives me an opportunity to look at, well, if I could do something today, if I could carve a belief system out of my mind today, or if I could implant a piece of wisdom right this moment that I think could support me in the future, what might that be? Because I do believe I have that ability. As much as this is not a question to create some type of resolution, my hope is that we can perhaps hold both in some type of way that they complement each other instead of seeing them in conflict with each other. And what I mean by that is, can I hold the belief that everything in my life has been with the intent of serving the greater good, not just of myself, but of everyone around me, and also carry the understanding that if I look back, there are some things that I feel, I don't want to say shame, because I kind of follow the Brene Brown model of shame means I am bad. And instead, I would go with guilt, because guilt means I did something bad. But I can hold both as true. I can hold that all of those experiences were for the sense of greater good. And at the same time, there are things that maybe it's too strong to say that I wish that they were different, but I do have a sense of guilt that they went certain ways. And I can see the potential of what could have been different had I not carried certain belief systems, or had I been able to harness pieces of wisdom. I also know that there's not wisdom living in the wishing it was different. And so that's a huge part of the carrying the and or the also is recognizing that, yes, there is a part of me that perhaps wishes things were different. And I know that the wisdom is not in that space. The wisdom is in the actual experience itself. So let me hand this back to you. If we could go back and we take off the table whether we should or whether we shouldn't, just for a moment, if we could go back, where would you go? What would you extract? What would you instill? And can you entertain this without going to the place of, it should have been different? Can you also hold both the truth that things could have been different, and there's something worthwhile to entertain there, and at the same time carry the truth that the wisdom is in the experience, and that perhaps it was all for the greater good? I offer those things to you not as truth, or not as even a suggestion of how you should or should not see the world. As with everything on this podcast, I know that I offer things that sometimes push people's buttons and don't necessarily align. And I do that on purpose, because my hope is by stretching our thoughts, stretching what feels comfortable, we get to see something different. And so even if this maybe crosses some edges for you, what lives there for you? I appreciate you taking the time to go down the rabbit hole with me, to explore the world of science fiction, to explore the world of what if and possibilities, and also to explore the world of holding multiple things as true that sometimes feel like they're in conflict with each other. And my final invitation is, if this did bring something up for you, and you would be open to sharing, I am always curious to hear. So if you are listening on a platform that allows for comments, please just drop it into the comments. If you are not, then head to Instagram, find me, andrew.carruthers, and shoot me a message. I would love to hear it. And just as a side note too, anytime people send me something private like that, you have my full confidentiality. I don't just openly share that unless I ask permission and you're open to that. So thank you again for listening. We'll see you on the next podcast.